After watching this video, you'll be able to define test-driven development, describe how TDD produces higher quality code, describe the red-green refactor workflow, and describe the importance of TDD for DevOps. This is one of my favorite quotes. If it's worth building, it's worth testing. If it's not worth testing, why are you wasting your time working on it? Writing test cases is critical to proving that your code works as intended. What is test-driven development? Test-driven development, TDD, means that your test case drives the design and development of your code. You don't write code and then test it. You write the test cases first. You write tests for the code you wish you had, and then you write the code to make them pass. That may sound counterintuitive. How can I write test cases for code I haven't written yet? Well, how can you write a design for code you haven't written yet? You describe in the design how the code should behave, and then you write the code that behaves that way. TDD is no different. The test case describes the behavior that you want the code to have. This keeps you focused on the purpose of the code. That is, what's it supposed to do? You should absolutely be able to specify that before you start writing any code. Otherwise, how do you know what to write? This is also what keeps you focused on the clients that will call your code. I do a fair amount of backend development. I love creating services for others to use. And one day, I'm creating what I'm sure would be an awesome service with a great application programming interface, right? A great API. I was down in the bowels of the code and I needed some information, and so I added it as a parameter to the API. And then I needed something else, and I added it as another parameter to the API. And eventually I needed more things, so I added those as parameters too. Now it's time to write some test cases for my code. And at the time, I wasn't following TDD. And when I started writing test cases, I suddenly realized I didn't have half the information that my parameters required. My beautiful API was horrible. How could it be this bad? Where had I gone wrong? Well, I didn't take the caller of my code into account because I wasn't following TDD. TDD gives you the caller's perspective. It allows you to explore how you would want to call the code before even writing it. It makes you consider, what do I know as the caller? What can I pass in and get back as an answer? Having this perspective is critical to writing good code. Code is of no use if no one can call it. So why don't developers write test cases? I get these excuses all the time. The first excuse, I already know my code works. Yes, but others who work on your code in the future won't know if they broke something, including the future you. I tell programmers, whenever you clone and pull from a repo, the first thing you do is run the test cases. How else do you know if you broke something or it was broken before you changed it? Test cases give you the baseline so that other people know that the code is still working. Another one is, I don't write broken code. Well, maybe you don't write broken code, but the environment is constantly churning underneath you. Vulnerabilities are being patched, new libraries are being upgraded, so your code may no longer work. Someone will say something like, we have a vulnerability in Apache Struts library. Can we update it on all our servers? And unless you have test cases to test your code and make sure that it works with a new version of that library, you probably shouldn't do that. And not doing that, as you may know from vulnerabilities that have happened at Equifax, could be catastrophic. You have to write test cases so that you can say with confidence, let me run the test suite. Yes, the new version of Struts works fine. Deploy it to production. My favorite excuse, I have no time. Well, this is the worst excuse because testing actually saves you time in the end. The time you spend writing a few test cases now is going to save you hours and hours of debugging later. Trust me on this one. You don't know who's going to use your code in the future, and you want to make sure your code is solid. TDD will keep you writing solid code. This is the TDD workflow. You write a failing test case, right, for the code you wish you had. Then you write just enough code to make it pass. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty. It does have to make the test pass though, right? Then you refactor the code to make it better and increase the quality. And finally, you repeat the process. This is known as red-green refactor. Many of the testing tools follow this scheme. These tools output failing test cases in red, passing test cases in green, and this is how the red-green refactor got its name. So why is TDD important to DevOps? Well, first and foremost, it saves time when you're developing. As you add new features to the code, or changes to existing features, right? This test case will quickly let you know if something broke. It allows you to code faster because you're more confident. You don't have to worry about if a change just broke your code or broke something, right? When you refactor the code, you can move faster because you know the test cases will catch any changes in behavior. And TDD ensures that the code is working as you expected. If you write the test cases first to define the behavior you want, you will know that you have achieved that behavior when the tests pass. It also means that future changes don't break the code. Failing test cases will instantly alert you that someone has introduced something that broke the code. Finally, and most importantly, in order to create a DevOps pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline, all tests must be automated unless you want to push bugs to production faster. A lot of companies don't understand this. They want to automate using continuous integration and continuous delivery. Without automating their tests, unfortunately, you can't have a CI/CD pipeline without automating your tests. In this video, you learned that TDD means test case drives the design and development of code. TDD allows you to develop faster and with more confidence. The red-green refactor workflow has to do with red is fail, green is pass, and it increases the quality of the code. And in order to create a DevOps CI/CD pipeline, you must first automate your testing.